This is why you'll always be average. My sister said it coldly as she tipped the glass. I didn't have time to move. I just stood there, frozen, as the water splashed across my open chemistry notebook, ruining the last 3 months of handwritten work I'd been preparing for a major grant submission. The pages soaked instantly. The ink bled and blurred like my sanity was being dissolved one formula at a time. My laptop barely escaped. My prototype, thank God, was on the shelf. Delilah smiled like she'd just done the world a favor. She didn't even try to pretend it was an accident. Maybe that's a sign, she shrugged. You've been wasting your life chasing something that's never gonna happen. Some of us have jobs. Some of us have dreams. You have this. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I stared down at the soaked notebook, heart hammering, throat tightening. Behind me, I heard our mom's heels clicking across the hardwood floor. Her wine glass clinked softly. She glanced down at the damage, then at me, then back to her phone. Maybe it is a sign, she said flatly. Maybe it's time to be realistic, Rory. You've been holed up in that room for months and haven't made a dime. That was it. No outrage. No concern. Just indifference. Just quiet approval of the fact that my sister, who still lives rent-free at 24 and whose biggest achievement this year was opening a nail blog, had destroyed my only shot at something big. They didn't understand. They never had. And they had no idea what I was about to do next. My name is Rory Quinn. I'm 20. I live in Portland, Oregon. I'm the daughter of a retail manager and a woman who treats Chardonnay like it's a personality trait. I didn't get lucky. I didn't get scholarships. I didn't even get encouragement. I got a garage and grit. And despite being treated like the background noise in my own home, I had been secretly building a working model for a clean energy conversion cell, something portable, efficient, and designed for low-income communities and disaster zones. I hadn't told them about the $50,000 grant competition I was applying for through the Innovators Accelerator program, because I knew what they'd say, because they only noticed effort when it came with applause, because no matter how far I reached, they always acted like I was just pretending to be more than what I was born into. But that moment, watching my notes dissolve under a pool of cheap lemon water, it flipped a switch inside me. And for the first time in years, I didn't just want to prove them wrong. I wanted to leave them stunned. That night, while Delilah FaceTimed her influencer friends about killing it on TikTok and Mom blared reality shows in the living room, I sat in my cold garage, knees pressed to my chest, staring at my waterlogged notebook under a heat lamp. I didn't cry. Instead, I started rewriting every equation from memory, every adjustment, every failure, every recalibration. My hands shook from cold and caffeine, but I didn't stop. I worked through midnight, then 2 a.m., then 5. By the time the sun cracked across the edge of the window, I had 6 pages rewritten. By 7 a.m., my prototype blinked with a full charge. And by noon that day, I had resubmitted my project, now with updated schematics and a video demonstration that I filmed right there in the garage. I sent the application to the IAP. I didn't even tell them. Not because I was afraid, but because they didn't deserve to know. The next few days, I stayed quiet, focused. I avoided meals, moved my prototype to a locker at my old community college. I picked up extra shifts at the bookstore to buy new supplies. Delilah bragged to her friends about getting a brand collab with a vegan hairbrush brand. Mom got another Botox appointment. And no one noticed I was building something bigger than all of them combined. Until the envelope came. Until that Monday morning when I found a black and gold envelope in the mailbox, thicker than usual, stamped with an IEP seal. They weren't emailing finalists this year. They were personally mailing only the top 3 candidates. I stood frozen on the porch. My breath fogged in the morning air. I read it again. Top 3 finalist. Live presentation round in Los Angeles. Fully funded. All expenses covered. Press coverage included. I had done it. And still, I didn't run inside screaming. I just smiled. slipped the envelope into my jacket, and walked past them like nothing had changed. Because the truth? Everything had. The airport terminal buzzed with travelers and overhead calls, but all I could hear was my own heartbeat. The envelope rested inside my backpack, zipped up next to the only business outfit I owned, borrowed slacks from my friend Neha, and a navy blouse I bought secondhand 2 years ago for a job interview I never got. I had exactly $42 in my bank account. I didn't belong in a competition where the other two finalists were Ivy League students with personal labs and private funding. At least, that's what Delilah told me before I left. "You really think you belong there?" she laughed, tossing her manicured hand through her hair. "They're just going to use your sob story. You're the scrappy girl from nowhere. You think that's sustainable?" Mom didn't say anything, just sipped her coffee and reminded me to not embarrass the family. I didn't argue. I just boarded the plane and made sure my prototype was protected like it was my heart beating in a box. Los Angeles was dizzying. They put us up in a boutique hotel downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, quiet hallways, a city that never blinked. I didn't sleep that first night, not because I was nervous, but because I was hungry. Literally. I couldn't afford room service, and I wasn't about to waste the little cash I had. So I drank water, sat in silence, went over my pitch again and again. The next morning, I met the other two finalists in the prep lounge. Caitlin Rowan, MIT. She walked in with a rolling case and a media assistant. She wore silk like it was armor and didn't look at me twice. Tarek Bennett, Columbia. Charming, loud, already shaking hands with the press team. His suit looked custom-fitted. His confidence was heavy, like he expected to win. Then there was me, in borrowed slacks and worn boots, clutching a storage case with wires poking out the side. I smiled anyway. They didn't. The prep room had 3 stations. Cameras, live mics, rehearsal crews. Caitlin was up first. Her presentation? Clean, rehearsed, clinical. A drone-based AI system for disaster relief supply delivery. Tarek's? Flashy. A water purification wearable band using nanofiltration. Marketable. Sleek. Then it was me. The room was colder when I stood. I connected my prototype to the screen, plugged in the solar panel, spoke clearly. And for a minute, just a minute, the silence wasn't judgmental. It was curious. Engaged. I didn't dazzle them with polish. I didn't have buzzwords. What I had was proof that something I built in a freezing garage from scraps and dollar store wiring worked. Generated clean, drinkable water. Stored it. Filtered it. Could be scaled up or carried in a backpack. It was simple. It was powerful. It was real. And when I finished, I caught a glance from the event coordinator, Mr. Langford, a former engineer with tired eyes and a Harvard pin on his lapel. He didn't smile, but he gave me a single nod, and that meant more than any applause. That night, the finalists were invited to a rooftop mixer. I wasn't going to go. I had no energy, no clothes, no appetite for fake smiles. But something in me said I needed to be there, that they needed to see me standing tall, even if I was the poorest one in the room. So I went. Jeans. Same blouse. Tied my hair back. And that's when Caitlin cornered me by the bar. "You're good," she said. "Too good." I didn't expect that. I blinked. She took a slow sip of champagne. "I've worked too hard to be upstaged by someone who built their prototype next to a washing machine." I stared at her. "What exactly are you trying to say?" She leaned in. Her voice dropped. "They vet finalists. But not every judge is neutral. Some of them like drama. Some of them like sabotage." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. She tapped my prototype case. "Be careful, Rory. You never know what could break in transit." Then she smiled and walked off. The next morning, the final demo round was scheduled for 10 a.m. At 6:45, I got to the staging room early, bag in hand, prototype carefully wrapped like it was a heart transplant, and that's when I froze. The lid of my case was slightly open. My stomach dropped. I had locked it. I double-checked it every time. My fingers were trembling before I even touched it, but the moment I opened it, I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. The coil was gone. The entire main copper coil, the one piece that conducted the charge between solar conversion and water output, gone. No note. No sign of damage. Just removed. Quietly.
Cleanly.
And I knew. I didn't have proof. But I didn't need it. Caitlin's smirk the night before, her be careful threat. It was all there. Obvious. Strategic. She didn't just want to win. She wanted me erased. I told the staff. They sympathized. But I had no camera, no witnesses. All they could offer was duct tape and an apology. We can delay your presentation 15 minutes, the tech guy offered. But if the device doesn't work, I'm sorry. I nodded slowly. Thanks. 15 minutes. That's all I had. 15 minutes to either give up or fight like hell. I raced outside. The parking lot was baking in the California sun, shadows short and cruel. I sprinted toward the event center's maintenance shed.
Prayed.
Dug through a dumpster. My palms were black with grease, my knees scraped raw. And then, like fate didn't hate me completely, I saw it. An old, rusted desk fan. I yanked the copper coil from its motor like my life depended on it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even remotely clean. But it was copper. And I ran. At 10:14 a.m., I took the stage.
Sweaty. Bruised.
Slightly out of breath. But I didn't blink. Because that room full of CEOs, engineers, founders, press, they weren't getting the polished version of Rory Quinn. They were getting the real one. The one who built things from trash. The one who rewired broken systems with $4 tools and dollar store tape. The one who didn't wait for permission. I connected the jerry-rigged coil. Flicked the switch. The green light came on. It worked. The panel stared, mouths parted slightly. I demonstrated how the unit filters dirty water, using a beaker I borrowed from the refreshment table. I explained the conductivity levels, the breakdown of parts, the rebuild under duress. I wasn't just pitching a product. I was telling a survival story. And when I finished, they clapped. They stood up and clapped. And Caitlin? She turned white. After the presentation, Mr. Langford, the tired-eyed judge with the Harvard pin, approached me quietly. He slipped me a folded piece of paper and whispered, "We have security footage. We'll be reviewing it privately." I opened it when he walked away. Inside were 4 words, scribbled in block pen. "You were crazy. We saw." By the time I got back to my hotel room, my phone had blown up. Not with texts from home. No, they still hadn't said a word. But with notifications. Hashtag Rory Quinn was trending on STEM Twitter. A reporter had snapped a photo of my jerry-rigged prototype and called me the scrap queen of innovation. And then the biggest shock of all, an email from a venture capital fund. Subject line, "We're interested in funding your concept." They were offering $200,000 in seed money. I just stared at the screen. 20 years old, living in a house where no one believed in me.
And now?
Now, they were offering 6 figures to bring my invention to life. Back home, Delilah finally texted. Just 3 words. "Are you serious?" Mom followed with, "Why didn't you tell us you were on the news?" I didn't reply. I just closed the messages. Because they were about to see exactly how serious I was. When I walked into the house, everything felt different. Not because the air had changed, but because I had. Mom was on the couch, robe loosely tied, TV muted but still flickering. Delilah leaned against the kitchen counter in an athletic set she probably hadn't sweat in. They both looked up like I'd walked in uninvited. And neither said, "Welcome back." Instead, Mom folded her arms. "So you're famous now?" Delilah laughed under her breath.
She's not famous.
She's just viral. That'll be over by next week. I set my bag down.
Calm.
Controlled. I was offered a startup deal. Startup, Mom repeated, like the word tasted like vinegar. "Rory, you can't build a life off of internet sympathy. You're just doing this for attention. You know that, right?" Attention? I stood there, filthy from travel, emotionally drained, still wearing the same 3-day-old boots, And they had the audacity to think this was about attention? My voice came out low, but sharp. I built a working device that can save lives in disaster zones. I got offers from 2 engineering firms and 1 VC. And you're worried I'm doing this for attention? Delilah rolled her eyes. You've always acted like you're better than us. No, I said, stepping closer. I acted like I deserved more than being ignored in my own house. The silence was heavy. Mom blinked. Well, I hope you know if you mess this up, we can't help you. There it was. Not pride. A threat. I didn't respond. I just turned and walked to my room, closed the door, and cried harder than I had the entire trip, because it wasn't the disbelief. It wasn't even the cruelty. It was knowing that even now, even after everything, they would rather watch me fail than admit they were wrong. The next few days were a whirlwind. News interviews, articles, a scheduled podcast appearance, emails from professors, invitations to innovation panels, even a DM from a famous science YouTuber asking to feature the prototype. And still, not once did my mother say, I'm proud of you. Not once did Delilah say, congrats. But they had no problem inviting their friends over. Mom hosted a brunch just to unwind, where she somehow told the story like she had been there, guiding me the whole time. Delilah posted a photo of me from the news with a caption, my sister doing big things #proud. I almost laughed. They didn't love me. They loved the attention I now brought them. But just when I thought things couldn't twist tighter, they did. I got an email from my AP. Subject, urgent, allegation of intellectual theft filed. My blood ran cold. Inside the message was a notice. Caitlin Rowan had filed a formal complaint. She claimed my prototype was based on her original design, which she conveniently published on a private blog 3 years ago. Her legal team wanted an injunction against my prototype until the matter could be resolved. My $200,000 investment? Frozen. My interviews? On hold. The podcast pulled my episode. Everything halted. I sat there at 2 a.m., staring at the glowing laptop screen, with the house silent around me. Just the hum of the fridge. My fingers numb. Heart racing. They were trying to erase me.
And worse?
They might win. Because I wasn't rich. I didn't have lawyers. I didn't even have someone to call. And for a moment, I sat in that darkness, thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe they were right all along. Maybe I was just average. Maybe I should walk away before I break harder than ever. But then I remembered. I remembered what it felt like to dig through garbage for copper wire. I remembered what it felt like to be laughed at for wanting more. I remembered Delilah soaking my notebook and Mom smiling as she said, maybe it's a sign to give up. And suddenly, the darkness inside me twisted into something sharper. Not fear. Fuel. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I spent hours documenting everything, timestamps, photos, source code, even the coffee-stained original sketches I'd stashed in a shoebox under my bed. At sunrise, I sent a desperate email to Dr. Langford from the judging panel. 3 hours later, I got a reply. Meet me on Zoom at 10. I know a lawyer. By noon, I was on a video call with Marla Jenkins, a pro bono attorney who specialized in intellectual property theft, especially when it targeted young female creators. She looked at the complaint, skimmed Caitlin's supposed blog post, and narrowed her eyes. This isn't even close. She's bluffing. But she froze my deal, I said, voice shaking. Marla nodded. Not for long. 2 days later, Caitlin's move backfired. Marla went public with the sabotage footage. She posted the security video showing Caitlin sneaking into the prep room and tampering with my case. It went viral.
Fast.
#SabotageQueen trended within hours. The startup investor called me the next morning. We're ready when you are, Rory. And then the podcast re-invited me. This time for a full episode. Back home, Delilah stood in the kitchen watching the news play my clip. She's everywhere, she muttered. Mom said nothing, just sipped her wine. They didn't say a word to me. But when I packed my bag the next morning, I left a note. You told me I'd always be average. But average girls don't get startup funding. Average girls don't survive sabotage. And average girls don't leave home like this. with everything they built and nothing they regret. 1 week later, I walked into my first board meeting. I wore the same boots from LA. My voice didn't shake. And when the head investor asked what made my invention different from the rest, I smiled, because I built it alone. And now I know exactly what I'm capable of. My sister's wedding was supposed to be perfect, I muttered under my breath, smoothing the creases of the soft blush pink satin dress I borrowed from my best friend after weeks of skipping meals to afford even a proper gift. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. The venue was drenched in money, gold-trimmed arches, floral arrangements worth more than my monthly rent, champagne already flowing before the ceremony even began. I stood by the fountain outside the banquet hall, clutching my gift bag, heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't even made it to the main hall yet. Then I saw her, Heather, the bride, my older sister by 5 years. She was wearing a $40,000 Vera Lang gown, her hair in a braided chignon, sparkling with diamonds from head to toe. She was glowing, beautiful, and already glaring at me. "Oh God," I whispered. I knew that look. She stormed across the lawn, her heels stabbing into the grass. A crowd trailed her, bridesmaids, relatives, old family friends. Everyone slowed when she reached me. Heather tilted her head, her voice dripping venom. "You really wore that? That's not even yours, is it?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I knew this wasn't about the dress.
Whose is it?
Let me guess, you borrowed it again. Because that's all you ever do. Take things that don't belong to you. Some chuckled. Some looked away, uncomfortable. But I stood still. She suddenly picked up a champagne glass from a nearby table. I had 2 seconds to guess what was coming. She threw it. The ice-cold liquid hit me square in the chest. The glass clinked at my feet. Gasps echoed around. My body stiffened as the satin stuck to my skin, cold and humiliating. "Don't wear borrowed clothes to my wedding," she hissed. "This isn't one of your hand-me-down birthdays." My lips parted, but I couldn't say anything. My throat burned. And then I heard it. "Heather," my mother snapped. But it wasn't anger in her tone. Just a weak, performative scold. She turned to me. "Sweetheart, you know how stressed she is today. Don't provoke her." My dad just sighed. "It's her big day, Alyssa. Maybe you shouldn't have come looking like you were trying to upstage her." Upstage her? In a borrowed dress? I blinked. My eyes stung. People were still watching. I wanted to disappear into the pavement. But instead I nodded. Quietly, without a word. I started to turn toward the exit, my hands shaking, heart pounding. Then a whisper swept through the courtyard. "Who is that?"
Gasp spread.
People turned. I followed their gaze and froze. A sleek black Maybach was pulling into the driveway. The driver leapt out to open the back door. And then he stepped out.
Tall.
Clean-cut. Dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than the entire reception's lighting rig. His eyes scanned the crowd. And then locked with mine. My breath caught. "Is that?" Someone mumbled. "Oh my God," a woman near me whispered. "That's him." He started walking toward me. Every step echoed like thunder. Heather's smugness evaporated. Her jaw slackened. She tried to smile, to regain control. He didn't look at her. He walked right up to me. He took off his jacket, carefully placed it over my soaked shoulders. Then, before anyone could blink, he turned to face the stunned crowd. "My wife," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "is the most graceful person here today. And she deserved better than this." My knees almost buckled. He turned to Heather. His voice dropped, but every syllable hit like a sledgehammer. I was going to quietly slip in for the reception and leave early.
But now?
"I think I'll stay. I'd love to see what kind of family teaches their daughter to humiliate people for fun." Heather's face turned red, then pale. A bridesmaid took a step back from her. My mom opened her mouth, but no sound came out. My dad just looked at the floor. People shifted uncomfortably. My husband's grip on my waist tightened, protectively, and in that moment, as he guided me past the guests, through the gold-trimmed arch, toward the stunned silence in the reception hall, I realized something. I wasn't here to beg for space at a table that never had a seat for me. I was here to burn the whole damn table down, without lifting a single match. As we stepped into the reception hall, his jacket still draped over my wet shoulders, the air felt heavier than before. The music had stopped. The servers paused mid-step. Everyone stared. The chandeliers glimmered above, but I felt like I was standing under a spotlight, the kind that exposes everything. Judgments. Hatred. Secrets. My husband, Caleb, leaned closer and whispered, "You okay?" I nodded, barely. "Good," he murmured. "Then hold your head up. You have nothing to be ashamed of." He let go of my waist and took my hand instead, firm, strong, unwavering, and walked me straight to the front table, the one labeled family of the bride. I stopped, startled. "Caleb." He pulled the card with my name from the back corner where they'd stuck me, behind a column, near the buffet trays. Then he calmly replaced it at the head table, right next to Heather's. The audacity was so silent, so controlled, it was devastating. Heather stomped toward us. Her veil was slightly tilted now, her makeup visibly creasing. "You can't just move things around. This is my wedding. My day." Kayla glanced at her and said quietly, "And you decided to ruin it by attacking your own sister? Who does that, Heather?" Her lips curled.
You don't know what it's like.
Alyssa always acts like the victim. She plays poor and humble, so people feel bad for her. "She is humble," Caleb replied, "and hardworking, and kind. And guess what? Kindness isn't weakness. It's something you'll never understand because you treat everyone like props in your little performance." Heather gasped like he'd slapped her. My parents finally walked in. Mom tried to manage the tension with a brittle laugh. "Let's not cause a scene. Let's just focus on celebrating love today, shall we?" Caleb turned to her, still polite but cold. "You mean the kind of love where you let one daughter publicly humiliate the other? Or the kind where you defend that behavior in front of 200 people?" My dad grunted. "We don't need lectures from a tech guy who got lucky." Caleb didn't blink. "You're right. I did get lucky. I married Alyssa." He turned to the silent guests, many of them still frozen in their seats. "I wonder how many of you would have stayed silent if this had happened to your daughter, your sister, your wife." No one responded, but the guilt in the room was thick. Heather's soon-to-be husband, Ryan, finally walked over, pulling at his collar, clearly embarrassed. "Babe, maybe just let this go." Heather's face hardened. "Are you kidding me right now?" "No," he said, voice low. "You've always been cruel to her. I told you not to start drama today." Heather's voice cracked. "You're taking her side?" "I'm taking the side of decency, Heather." My mom tried again. "This is all being blown out of proportion." Alyssa's always had a flair for dramatics. I stayed quiet. I finally said. My voice shook, but it rose with every word. "I stayed quiet for years. When she mocked me at Thanksgiving. When she laughed at my shoes at Christmas. When you told me I should just be grateful she invited me anywhere at all." My mother turned red. "That's not. It is what you said." I cut in. And I let it go. Again and again. I never fought back, because I didn't want to ruin the mood. Because I didn't want to seem petty. But you know what's worse than being petty? I took a step forward. Being spineless. The hall was silent. And then something I never expected happened. Ryan's mother stood up. "I watched that little scene outside," she said. "And I thought to myself, what kind of family lets that happen? I thought I was here to celebrate a union between two strong families. Now I see only one of them deserves that title." Heather's face drained of color. Ryan looked away. Caleb gently nudged me. "You want to leave?" I paused. Then I shook my head. "No. I'm staying. I want to see how the rest of this train wreck unfolds." And we sat at the head table, his arm protectively around my chair, while Heather's perfect wedding cracked like a porcelain vase dropped from too high. What they didn't know was this. My silence wasn't weakness. It was control, and control was power. The reception limped forward like a wounded animal. Music resumed, but quieter. Waiters began to move again, but the sparkle was gone. Laughter sounded forced, stiff. Conversations were hushed and awkward. I sat at the head table beside Caleb, napkin across my lap, my damp dress hidden beneath his tailored jacket. I could feel eyes darting toward me, some sympathetic, some burning with judgment, most confused. Heather was off to the side with her bridesmaids, whispering frantically. I saw her motion toward the wedding planner, her hands flailing. The planner simply nodded politely and walked away, clearly tired of being in the crossfire. Caleb leaned close to me, his voice warm. "You don't have to stay, babe." "I know," I said, softly. "But I want them to see I'm not afraid of them anymore." He gave a proud smile and kissed my temple. "By the way," he added, "I've been waiting all week for this moment." I blinked. What moment? But he didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. With one quick swipe, he sent a message. I didn't know it then, but he just set something into motion that would turn the entire wedding upside down. 5 minutes later, while Heather and her mother were still arguing by the dessert table, the double doors of the reception hall opened again. And in walked two people I hadn't seen in years. Caleb's parents. But not just his parents, Caleb's real parents. The ones Heather had bragged to about her humble, self-made sister with a small house and second-hand clothes. The ones she'd mocked for not being from our circles. What she didn't know was this. Caleb came from a quiet, but incredibly powerful legacy. His family just didn't flaunt it. His mother wore a navy blue gown, elegant and sharp. His father had that composed stiffness of someone who ran multi-state enterprises and could dismantle a man's career with a phone call. Heather froze. My parents did too. Caleb stood up and greeted them with a warm smile. "Glad you made it." His mother kissed his cheek, then turned to me with a kind smile. "You look beautiful, sweetheart. Even in my soaked dress. Even with champagne stains. Even with all eyes on me." For the first time that day, I felt seen. Heather clutched her bouquet so tight the stems bent. Caleb's father turned toward my parents. "I was hoping we'd meet under more civil circumstances." My dad tried to muster a smile. "Well, today's hectic." "Yes," Caleb's mother said, her voice cool. "We watched your daughter throw a drink on our daughter-in-law." Very hectic indeed. The tension was now unbearable. People stared like they were watching a live courtroom drama. Heather, clearly spiraling, finally burst.
This was supposed to be about me.
"Not Alyssa. She's always stealing the spotlight." "Really?"
Caleb said.
"Because from what I remember, she's the one who stayed late taking care of your drunk friends at your bachelorette party. The one who helped you pay off that first wedding planner who ghosted you. The one who said nothing every time you insulted her." I was stunned. He knew all of that? "And still," Caleb continued, "you humiliated her in front of everyone she loves. You should be ashamed." Heather looked around, but there were no defenders left. Even her bridesmaids looked uncomfortable now. Her own fiancé was silent, watching. And then came the final blow. Ryan's mother, who had stayed quiet since her earlier outburst, stood once again. "Ryan," she said carefully, "I want to speak with you. Alone." Ryan nodded and followed her to the hallway. 10 minutes passed. When he returned, he looked Heather dead in the eye and said, "We need to talk. Now." They left together through the side exit, and the whispers exploded like wildfire. I felt my chest tighten, like I couldn't breathe. Caleb leaned into me again. "You okay?" I said slowly, "I think her wedding might be falling apart." He nodded.
"Good."
A minute later, the wedding planner quietly approached Heather's parents and whispered something. My mom covered her mouth. My dad clenched his fists. Then the planner walked over to us. "Would you like to say a few words?" Caleb blinked. "Excuse me?" "The bride and groom have stepped away for an extended conversation. The guests are waiting. You two seem to have everyone's attention anyway." I looked at Caleb. He looked at me. Then we both stood. I picked up the mic, my hands no longer shaking.
Hi, I said.
I wasn't planning on speaking today, but I suppose life is full of surprises. A nervous laugh swept the crowd. I continued. I was told today that borrowed clothes don't belong at a luxury wedding. But you know what's worse than a borrowed dress? Borrowed kindness. And fake smiles. People murmured. Eyes flicked toward Heather's empty seat. Real love, I said, isn't loud. It's not cruel. It doesn't humiliate. It builds. And the man sitting beside me? He built me back up when the people closest to me broke me down. That's the only kind of luxury I care about. Caleb took the mic next. I didn't marry Alyssa because of who her family is or isn't. I married her because I've never met anyone with her strength, her heart, and her grace. And today, I saw her strength in full display. He turned toward me and kissed my forehead. And the crowd clapped. Not a polite clap. Not a forced one. A genuine one. Even the DJ, unsure what else to do, queued up a slow song. And for the first time that day, I smiled.
Because this was my moment now.
And no one could throw water on it. The music played softly in the background as Caleb led me to the dance floor. My dress was still damp, clinging to my skin, but I no longer cared. The warmth of his hands around mine, the quiet strength in his eyes, it made everything else fade. Guests slowly filtered in to join us. Hesitant at first, unsure if it was okay to keep celebrating. But then, one by one, people moved forward. Some to dance. Some to just stand near us. And some to apologize. Heather's cousin, the one who once made fun of my job as a substitute teacher, came up with her head lowered. I'm sorry, Alyssa. I didn't know it was that bad. I nodded silently. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I could recognize honesty. Then came my mother. She stood at the edge of the floor, unsure whether she was welcome. Her hands wrung the small clutch purse she always carried to formal events. Her eyes didn't meet mine. I didn't realize it had gotten this far, she said quietly. Didn't you? Caleb said, not unkindly. You just didn't want to realize. She looked at me again, her voice cracking. You've always been different. Quieter. You didn't fight back like Heather did. I thought that meant you were fine. I swallowed hard. I wasn't. She closed her eyes. I should have protected you more. I should have taught her better.
You still can, I said.
If you want to. Before she could answer, the side doors opened again. Heather walked in alone. Her makeup was smudged, and her veil was gone. The tiara sat crooked on her head like it didn't belong anymore. All eyes turned to her. Her steps were slower now, less confident. She made her way to the microphone and looked out at the room. I'm not good with words, she began. Her voice trembled. And I guess I'm not great with kindness either. I messed up. Not just today, but for years. I turned everything into a competition because I thought love was something you earned by winning.
She looked at me then.
And you always had it, without even trying. That made me jealous. I didn't know what to say. I just stood there, heart pounding, listening. I hurt you, she said. And I embarrassed you. In front of everyone. I don't expect you to forgive me. But I needed everyone to know that I'm not proud of who I've been. She stepped down. Walked straight past me. No hug. No forced apology moment. Just a quiet exit into the night. And I realized this wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming who I was, without their shame, without their voices defining me. Later, when most guests had left and only close family lingered, Caleb and I sat together at the edge of the stage. The night air drifted in through the open doors, soft and cool. I meant what I said up there, he told me. You really are the strongest person I know. I leaned against his shoulder. Even in a borrowed dress? He smiled. Especially in a borrowed dress. We sat in silence for a while. Then I turned to him. You know, maybe next time, I'll just skip the wedding altogether. He laughed. No way. You own this one. And for once in my life, I believed it. I wasn't just someone's quiet sister. I wasn't just background noise. I was me. And that was finally enough. The wedding officially ended just after 10. By then, most of the guests had gone. The hall looked different now, like a stage after the show ends. Tables half cleared, candles flickering out, silence settling over gold-stitched tablecloths that once hosted forced smiles and fake toasts. I stood near the large double doors, watching staff quietly clean up. For the first time all night, I felt calm. My soaked dress had dried in the warm evening air, leaving faint watermarks and the memory of champagne, marks I now wore with pride. Behind me, my dad stepped closer. Not beside me, just near. "Alyssa," he said, tone low. That wasn't easy to watch. I turned a little, still not facing him fully. It wasn't easy to live through either. He shifted on his feet. "I know I haven't been the father you deserved, but watching you tonight, you didn't just sit there. You stood up. I was proud of you." I looked at him for a long moment. "Then maybe next time, speak during the moment, not after." His mouth opened, then closed again. And to his credit, he nodded. "I'll try." That was all he said, but it felt like more than he'd ever offered before. Caleb came up behind me and gently placed a hand on my back. "Ready to go?" I nodded.
Yeah.
"Let's go home." As we walked out of the venue, Caleb opened the car door for me like he always did, quietly, without show. We drove in silence for the first 10 minutes, the city lights passing in soft glows across my lap. And then he asked, "How do you feel?" I thought about it. "I feel free." I stared out the window. For so long, I thought being quiet made me weak. But I've never felt stronger than I did today. And not because of what I said, but because I didn't let them break me. He reached over, laced his fingers with mine. They never could. When we got home, I stepped out and looked up at our modest little house. It didn't have chandeliers or marble floors, but it held something far more rare: peace. Inside, I peeled off the dress and folded it carefully. I'd return it to my friend in the morning, with a full explanation and a hug. I stepped into the shower and let the water run over me, not to wash away the night, but to embrace the start of something new. That night, as I lay in bed beside Caleb, I scrolled through the dozens of messages on my phone. Some were from guests. Some were from people I hadn't spoken to in years. But one stood out. It was from Heather. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but if you're willing to talk one day, I'll be here. No drama, just truth." I didn't reply. Not yet. Some wounds need time to breathe before they heal. But I knew this much. She would never see me the same way again. None of them would. Because the quiet girl they thought they could humiliate had finally found her voice. And she wasn't afraid to use it anymore.